Krauthammer mentioned, health care turned into a hot topic tonight, especially when Senator Cruz put on his prosecutor hat in this exchange with Donald Trump.
Donald, true or false, you've said the government should pay for everyone's health care?
That's false.
You've never
That's
said
false.
that.
No, I never. I said it worked in a couple of countries, but
you've never stood on this debate stage and says it works great in Canada and Scotland, and we should do it here. Did you say if you want people to die on the streets, if you don't support socialized health care, you have no heart?
I will not let people die on the streets if I'm president.
Have you said you're a liberal on health care?
Excuse me, let me talk.
Talk away. Explain your plan, please.
My plan is very simple. I will not. We're going to have private. We're going to have private health care.
Well, we performed a little fact-checking of our own on Mr. Trump over his comments. You, the viewer, can be the judge to see whether Senator Cruz was accurate. Watch.
Everybody's got to be covered.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it. As far as single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland. It could have worked in a different age, which is the age you're talking about here.
We have got a powerful panel for you tonight. Chris Stirewalt, our Fox News digital politics editor. Dana Perino, co-host of The Five and former White House press secretary under President Bush. Howie Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz here on Fox. Mark Thiessen is a Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter to President George W. Bush. Great to see you all. Let me start with you, Stirewalt. What'd you think?
Well, I got to tell you, the desperation is a gift, and the gift it gives is willingness. And tonight, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz were willing to take on Donald Trump. They largely succeeded. I think most successfully in the area of his tax returns, most successfully when they forced Donald Trump into a position where he said that he'd release his tax returns after he was done being audited, which I think will stand as a unique moment in debate history. But they became willing because they became desperate, and I think they succeeded.
But that is the question, Dana, is to what effect, right? I mean, to what effect?
Well, when you played that clip of Cruz, it was almost at the end you want to say the prosecution rests. And you're right, the people can decide. Here's the thing, though. Donald Trump has done okay in previous debates, and he's gone on to win elections, the subsequent elections in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and then in Nevada. So I don't know how much of this debate performance will affect him, but I would say that if you were looking for a little bit of snap in your noodle, as Chris Stirewalt wrote this morning and explained to me later on in the day what that meant, I think that Cruz and Rubio and Kasich all brought a little more snap to the noodle tonight.
I am not going to touch that. Mark, let me ask you, what was the goal? Because we saw Rubio out there, I mean, you know, like a prize fighter, just jabbing and, you know, bouncing. He was smiling. He seemed to be enjoying it. So what was his goal? Because the odds of him pulling away Trump's core support, not so good.
No, absolutely. I mean, Charles said he was landing haymakers. He was also landing jabs and crosses and uppercuts. I mean, it was just a pummeling. And the first half of the debate was just Marco Rubio versus Donald Trump for the most part. Well, what was he doing? So think about this. There's 35% of the electorate that is for Donald Trump. He was not going after those people. He was not trying to dislodge those people. He was going for the other 65% who want somebody other than Donald Trump, who he's got to consolidate if he's going to get this to a one-on-one match. And if you think about it, after South Carolina, after Nevada, there were millions of Republicans in that group who are absolutely despondent that Donald Trump is inevitable, that nobody can lay a glove on this guy. And what Marco Rubio did today was to have those millions of Americans look and say, finally, somebody landed a glove on this guy. Finally, somebody drew blood from Donald Trump.
When?
And so,
what was the draw blood moment?
Well, you played a litany of, as you called it, the bazooka of opposition research. But I think the real moment there was right before that bazooka when he kept trying to get him to talk about his health care plan. Well, what is your plan? What is your plan? What is your plan? And Trump kept saying the lines around the states. And he said, that's it? What else in the lines? He exposed him as being a complete empty suit. And so I think it wasn't just one moment. It was a series of moments. It was watching a pummeling. And I think that a lot of people looked at Marco Rubio tonight and said, that's the guy. That's the guy who can take on Donald Trump, and I can't wait to see him against Hillary Clinton. So I think it was more targeted, even though he wasn't hitting Ted Cruz, it was kind of targeted at Ted Cruz's supporters and trying to take them away and say, I'm the guy who could take on Donald Trump.
Well, we heard some reports just this week that some of Ted Cruz's supporters may be meeting to sort of reassess whether they need to make a different decision, some of the evangelical leaders in particular, because they are considering Marco Rubio. That's what we were told. Howie, a lot of times we look at these debates, even last week, right? The debate that happened on February 13th, and Trump was angry and he said some mean things about George W. Bush, like he lied to start a war. And people said, oh, but he only grew in support, and how? And time again, we've seen a misunderstanding of this man by the American electorate and the pundits.
Absolutely. We might be seeing that here because he took the incoming from both sides. Now, he had some bad moments. Marco Rubio was effective at times, but as Rubio threw the kitchen sink at him and the wrench and the hammer and the screwdriver, I think it had an overly programmed quality at times. And, you know, the whole debate in 10 seconds was, Rubio, you hired Polish workers. Trump, you never hired anybody. Rubio, you used daddy's money. Cruz, you fired Dennis Rodman on Celebrity Apprentice. And Trump says, nobody likes you. So I think they talked over each other, and Wolf Blitzer and company clearly lost control at several points. Yeah. Therefore, in the din, I think some of it canceled itself out.
You know, Chris, once again tonight we heard a Donald Trump that sounded very much like he's blown past these guys. He's running for the general election. I mean, he was reaching out to the Democrats, I'm assuming, with once again doubling down on how great Planned Parenthood is. We have that here. Watch it.
As far as Planned Parenthood is concerned, I'm pro-life. I'm totally against abortion having to do with Planned Parenthood. But millions and millions of women, cervical cancer, breast cancer, are helped by Planned Parenthood. So you can say whatever you want, but they have millions of women going through Planned Parenthood that are helped greatly. And I wouldn't fund it. I would defund it because of the abortion factor, which they say is 3%. I don't know what percentage it is. They say it's 3%, but I would defund it because I'm pro-life. But millions of women are helped by Planned Parenthood.
Governor Kasich.
Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I'm moving ahead to the general election. Well, I'll put it this way. I wouldn't sleep on Marco Rubio. He's got 2 or 3 weeks. He has a week to do okay next week. He's got 3 weeks until this thing's over if Trump keeps rolling the way he is. But I wouldn't sleep on Marco Rubio because, and looking ahead to the general election is fine if you're Trump and you believe you've got it locked up. But Jeb Bush and Charlie Crist in their past slept on Marco Rubio too, and he cut him up into ribbons and sent him home. And if you remember that moment when Marco Rubio said to Donald Trump, if you hadn't inherited $200 million, you'd be selling watches in Manhattan, you know that you can't sleep on that guy because you can't give him room because he'll hit you hard.
They're already putting out, the Rubio campaign website is already posting watches for sale to try to keep this going. I'll ask you one last question, Dana. Do you think that the Rubio response that Charles was talking about, where he was ripping back on Trump for repeating himself? You know, Trump said to say, you had a devastating moment at that debate, and Rubio turned it around on him and said, you repeat things all the time. Win, 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 lines around the states. Does that effectively stop that attack on Rubio? I mean, has he made it have enough, charge for Trump that Trump probably is not going to go there again?
I think that Marco Rubio had already done that because what you're talking about, that debate happened in New Hampshire. He recovered and rebounded in South Carolina and held that into Nevada. Now he's able to be a little bit self-deprecating, but to use it as a sharp elbow. And on the Planned Parenthood thing, I think Donald Trump's answer was very good. It has about Planned Parenthood has about a 70% approval rating across the country, which is why Republicans strike this wrong chord when they say they're going to shut down the government over Planned Parenthood. You have Republicans who think that it should be defunded. But you are not going to be able to win, not just a general election. You look at some of these numbers. I actually think that when Donald Trump says I'm a common sense conservative, and you look at an answer like that, that a lot of people could say, okay, that makes sense to me.
Right.
And
I believe
Republicans should
it.
think about that.
Panel, great to see you all.
Thank you.